Part 4 of the hook punch and variations. We will review thrusting and lunging, leaping. I wouldn't call this a heavy-footed move. At some point you have to shift or transfer weight to allow the lead foot to lift forward. So yeah, you should also be practicing your footwork in positions which shift and transfer weight. Of course your rear leg and foot will act to spring and power you forward. The rear can also act as a stabilizer or share the thrust forward with your lead foot if your lead foot does a bit more reaching and leaping forward. A good version is a 1-2 effect of bending and triggering the rear while lifting the lead forward. And one basic going backwards is just reversing the power spring in the lifting forward foot. Here's a few powered by the lead leaping forward. And here's the rear powering the leap again. This is like a mix of both. Okay, exaggerating the coordination for the rear acting as both the power and lead because it thrusts forward first to meet the lead. Pretty much a classic skipping effect. Now here are good mixes of lead and support happening with both feet. They go almost at the same time and each foot is doing a portion of causing the thrust forward. This thrust forward effect can be used for or as part of an advancing stance change. You can kind of thrust and leap your way through the change. Coordinating your strike and the landing lead foot. To strike before the lead lands can be average. To strike after the lead lands can be strong. It's now a planted foot with momentum energy. An almost simultaneous landing and strike can be a bit of both, strong and fast. Striking in transition with one foot off the ground is not forbidden, but the risks increase if you are taking a big long step or thrust off the ground. During that time, you have one grounded leg for balance and it takes a little longer to change your position until your other foot lands. Thrusting forward can still involve body angles and rotations. You could also thrust off center line and strike from the side or rotate back on line. Yeah, it's an evasive sidestep. Let's look at those thrusts I just did one more time. The first one uses a lot of rear for the sidestep. The second and third are more even combinations of both feet. Okay, a little about going backwards. Usually the power springing foot is now your lead forward foot, driving you backward. Usually try to avoid big upward bunny hops. In a way, one level before thrust and leaps are your shuffles. Transition from a shuffle to a powerful lunge or thrust without telegraphing your move or change in movement. The element of surprise is very valuable here. Here's a little shuffle, then a lunge. Here I'll slip in a thrust to change position while striking through the position. Yes, weight shifts and transfers are involved, but the foundation for that is how you mix and match and coordinate your feet for springing force and movement through the thrust direction. Just getting a few punches out of my system. Okay, to really extend and stretch out to a bigger thrust, a leap, we're pretty much also doing a forward skip. One goal is to minimize our vertical rising up and down with it. Instead, drive forward, stay level, and don't lift the feet too high. You can even drag, scrape, or glide the rear foot, sometimes both feet, although a leaping lunge will usually involve more lift off the ground. Yes, the mechanics, the physics, will need you to chamber and trigger your rear power spring a bit more. Practice so you can get that extra trigger without the telegraphed extra rear dipping or bending down before springing. Do some fakes and then follow up with your lunges. A lead foot that lands can then become a power spring into another thrust. Practice with the core and lower extremities and resist using your arms to reach out for leverage to thrust and lunge. Of course, practice keeping the guard up, which is hard to do with bigger leaps. Some setups as you square up to an opponent as both of you close in to engage. Explode out of your current stance as you're coming in or as you're walking in. These are shuffles and walks that end up stepping into a strike. It's good to be fluid with this because it can turn into thrusting when you want. As you're stepping or walking in, you could slip in an extra rotation of the body, or you can mask that rotate in. And you don't have to end up stepping into a very deep and wide stance. Practice less committed length and width positions. Cuffing your punches, snapping your punches, hammering and driving your punches. Mastering your ability to have these differences helps make you a multi-dimensional fighter. And then that helps your ability to make adjustments during a fight, or it even helps you with any of your decision-making during a fight. Training, being proficient, or mastering these variations and differences can reduce your overthinking and overanalyzing during a fight. All of this can also make it difficult for your opponent to adjust to you or exploit you. Hooks, hooks, and more hooks. From big stances to small, and really big stances, and back to small. Well, that's about it for part 4. I might go back and practice some things on the tree trunk, but I'm hardly in fighting condition, and striking and banging with that kind of organism can be very unforgiving. But looking on the bright side, it's not like trying to survive a bear or tame a lion, or face Mike Tyson when he comes out of retirement.